So before we continue, I want to tell you that this is the time of your life. This is the time of your life. If you are willing to claim it, to accept it, and to do the work towards it, right? Like you all know me, it's about holding the vision and doing the things that we got to do to live into that vision. And I really want to invite you to join me in a program that is kicking off next weekend. It's called the Summer of Abundance. Is this your summer of abundance? Is this your summer of abundance? Is this your summer of abundance? Jason, does that mean that everybody just signed up for the workshops? Or do we need them to go to the website? So listen, actually, yesterday at the Peace Picnic, I was talking to a few people who were part of Unity U last year, and they said that this class, which we now created a program out of, was the single most important class that they took all year long, and they took like 10 different classes last year. The one thing that they said was, I wish we had more time with each of the principles or each of the topics. And I thought to myself, oh, then we were onto something. Because what we did this year is instead of making it a 6-week class, we separated it out into 6 different workshops so that we could have more time with each of the topics on Saturday mornings. And so really want to invite you to sign up. You can sign up for the individual workshops, or you can do the whole Summer of Abundance program. But we're going to talk about the power of thoughts and the power that is within us in our thinking, but also how to create a positive mindset. Right? So it's not only about the affirmations, but the work so that what we claim, we believe. Also, we're going to go into the attitude of gratitude, not only to create that attitude, but to create the practices that continue to bring us into the space of gratitude. We're going to go into visualization and the power of imagination. We're going to go into creating more in our lives through being in the flow. You know, many times we've shared with you, one of the ways in which we get to know God more fully is to emulate that which we know God to be, including generosity. So as we give, so we receive. We're going to get into the power of grit, which, if you're alive, you know, there is that power of perseverance, of being able to move through, not only have our beliefs, but regardless of what is taking place, hold on to those beliefs and trust and have faith in them. And then when we do all of that, we're going to go into how to live truly from a place of joy. Not because of outside circumstances, but because we know that it is our natural state of being, and we do the work to uncover it more fully. So, is this your summer of abundance? Yes. Is this your summer of abundance? Yes. I really think that this is everybody registering for the workshop. So I'll see you all there. All right, so maybe I'm in, never mind. Okay, I almost ruined the joke is what happened, okay? I almost went straight to the punchline. So, what is the first math problem in the Bible? When God told Adam and Eve, go forth and multiply. Okay. God, maybe I should have ruined the punchline, right? So, but you're going to get some Bible today. You're going to get some metaphysics today. We are going to get into it. And I really love the different stories, the allegories that are in the Bible. You know, in Unity, we believe that we can learn a lot and we can glean a lot from these stories, because the reason why they are in the Bible is because they're a reflection of who we are. Those stories are there because we are there. And so the experiences and the stories really invite us into a deeper understanding of our own spiritual journey and how we can not only use the tools and the lessons from it, but how we are always living into them, whether we're conscious of it or not. And so the story of Adam and Eve is one of those stories, and I really love the understanding that we have in Unity. So first and foremost, we don't use that story to believe that we are original sinners. We are not born in original sin. We are born in original blessing. And the story of Adam and Eve, if you look at it, it's the story of like being in bounty, being in abundance, that Garden of Eden. Everything that they needed was right there. And now we talk about the fall of man. Some people may have heard that term in unity, and I believe the fall of man isn't when God kicked Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden. It actually happened before. The moment that they took from the apple is the moment, if you know the story, that they started to see things differently. Because they were always naked in the story, but all of a sudden they took the apple and they were guilty. They felt guilt and shame for being naked. That which they thought was bountiful, they started to see separation from it. And isn't that some of what we are still learning through, that we are one, that we are in the Garden of Eden? It's not that nobody kicked us out. It's that we no longer allow ourselves to see it and to feel it, and therefore we're not able to fully experience it. But I believe that the work that we have before us is to move back into that consciousness of Eden, that garden where we know that we trust and have faith that all that we ever need is already at hand, that God is our supply, that God is our source, and all we have to do is see it right. All we have to do is acknowledge it and start living into it more fully. And so the story of creation begins with abundance, with God creating all that we saw before us and calling it good. And then something happened in us, whatever it was that made us think otherwise. We saw it differently. And we started making experiences out of our false narrative that we needed more than had been provided for, because it was this idea that we just had lack and limitation around us. There was competition around us, rather than acknowledging that the source of our good was within us, and it was manifesting in our lives all that we would ever need. And so it creates these stories and it creates these ideas, right, that there isn't enough for everyone. Anyone fall into the idea that there isn't enough for everyone? That if I get my share, they won't get their share. If they get their share, I won't get my share. It happens within our lives individually. It happens in our community. It happens in the government, right? Like, if we give to those that do not have, will we have enough for the other things? And so there's this competition of how our resources are used individually in our own lives. It's like, well, if I pay this bill, I may not have enough for this bill. If I tithe and give generously to the place where I'm spiritually nourished, I may not have the money to go on the vacation. And it's all founded, and it's all anchored in this idea that God wouldn't provide for us, that we aren't able to tap into the source of our good and experience abundance, an abundance that allows us to live into all of the dreams and all of the aspirations that we have within our heart if we do the work. It also shows up in this idea that we're merely here to survive. And I've shared this with you before. I don't believe that story. That story is old, right? Like, I've lived that story. How many of you have lived that story of just trying to get by, trying to survive? You all know some of my past and my history. It was a big part of my story. I'm grateful that I'm no longer there, and I'm grateful that I can stand before you and share that I believe we're all meant to thrive. And not only in one area of our lives and the other ones suffer, that we're able to thrive in every single area of our lives if we are willing to see it, if we are willing to claim it, and if we're willing to do the work to know that what we claim, we believe. So, got a bill to pay? It's about trusting faith. It's about trusting the faith that is within us, that we can claim our good. Charles Fillmore says, "It is God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom, and all that God has is ours. But we must have the faith and the courage to claim it with our heart, to claim it with our soul, and to turn to faith rather than to turn to hopelessness." And I was sitting with hopelessness because I think I'm a very hopeful person. And yet, I realize that hopelessness is it's a pretty insidious thing, right? It keeps us from doing some of the things that is within us to live into. And some of the ways in which that hopelessness shows up is through just not feeling like we're being supported, like we don't have enough to achieve our dreams, that we're not good enough, right, to experience our dreams. And so those are some very clear ways that it sometimes shows up. But I also realize that it likes to hide in us, right? And hopelessness, sometimes we can't pinpoint and call it hopelessness, but it shows up as victimization, right? Like that life is happening to me and that I'm a victim of all the things that are happening. Hopelessness to realize that actually the hope of our glory is that Christ essence that we are. It also shows up in that idea of survival mode, because that to me is hopelessness. Hopelessness that there is a different way of being, and that there is a different way that I get to show up in my life, that I get to experience the bounty of God's good, and that I'm made to just try to get by. I believe that there's this myth of scarcity that we have all been sort of living into in one way or another, and that it's right about time that we no longer accept that myth as our reality, but also that we don't accept it as a reality for other people, right? So that we believe in our bounty, and through that we believe that everyone has the ability to live into their bounty. And as we live into our bounty, we make it easier for other people to experience it in their own lives. And so it's time to change the narrative and to recognize, for me, or I invite you into this, to know that all of our experiences, all of our challenges, all the times that we felt bountiful, abundant, and prosperous, and all the times that we didn't, are bringing us into a different narrative and a different knowing and a different trust. As Eric Butterworth said, don't go through life, grow through life. Grow through life. And I would even add, grow into the truth, right? It's life and it's truth. But in order for us to do that, we do have to have some grit. I get it. You know, it's not easy. It's much easier for me to talk about all those challenges and God's abundance and prosperity now that I am not experiencing some of the things that I experienced in the past, right? With my own expression of abundance. But I understand that it's all a work in progress, and we're all doing the best we can, and here we are in this space where we're now being invited to experience life, thriving life. And so it's not just having the faith, but it's having the strength. I'm really into the power of strength these days, you know, because it's about being able to, yes, know and trust that we have the faith, but to have the spiritual strength to endure with hope, the spiritual strength to see every experience in our lives and choose faith. See, we have faith, but we have a choice to live into it or not. And so strength allows us to live into it. So we got a bill to pay, I choose faith. We feel stuck at a job, I choose faith. We have a relationship to mend, I choose faith. We have an unhealthy pattern that is time for us to release, I choose faith. And we can all do that and continue to move into that which is already implanted in us, right? Like that bounty that I'm talking about, it's not just a bounty that we live into, it's a bounty that is within us. We have already been created with the divine pattern of the Christ within us, the power to do what is for us to do. Now, I believe we can also learn from another story in the Bible, and some people will have known this story. It's one of my favorite stories, and again, it's our story because it's there to support us in seeing ourselves in a different way. And it's the story of the loaves and the fish. How many of you know the story of Jesus and the loaves and the fish and the multiplication of them? So for those of you who don't worry, I'm going to go through it. And for those of you who do, don't worry, I'm going to go through it. So Jesus had been teaching and healing, and he was getting to be a very popular guy, and people started coming from far away to listen to him. And so the story of the loaves and the fish begins with him teaching and healing, and there was a multitude. In one version, it's like 5,000 people. Some of you may have heard 5,000. Actually, it said 5,000 men and women and children. In another story, it says 10,000. But it was a big crowd. And as it would happen, normally, by the end of the evening, when he was done teaching, they would have to go into the town to eat. And in this story, all of a sudden, the apostles come over to Jesus and say, it's getting kind of late. We should let everybody know to go into the town so that they can have their supper. And Jesus surprises the apostles and answers them, no, we will give them something to eat. And so the apostles look around and they're surprised and they reply. And they look around and they say, well, we only have 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish. We can't feed this group of people, right? And in that is a really powerful understanding, because Jesus says that's enough. And this is where some metaphysics comes in, because 5 loaves of bread, 5 metaphysically is the number of the 5 senses, right? Like the world of the senses. It's bread. Metaphysically, bread signifies substance. That which gives us our sustenance, that which feeds us spiritually. The 2 fish, the number 2, dualism. Good and evil, haves and have-nots, rich and poor. The world of dualism, right? Which is a world of competition also. And so there's the dualism, but fish also represents divine ideas in the Bible, metaphysically. And it's the understanding that the way in which we receive our abundance, the way that we live into our abundance, and the way that we live into our goals and dreams and aspirations is by tapping into the divine ideas that God has provided within us, the divine ideas that we get to connect with through the Christ that lives in us. And so right there, you already have the first lesson. Which way are you going to look at life through? Is it through the world of the 5 senses and dualism, or is it going to be from the place of God, from the place of spirit, from the place of spiritual world that is what feeds us? It is what brings us to a greater sense of being. And so that is the choice that we get to make. And Jesus knew that it wasn't the 5 and the 2. Jesus knew that it was the substance and it was those divine ideas that was the perfect supply that was needed and the good that was unlimited to feed us always and to feed our dreams and to feed our desires. And so we have a choice. Which one will we look through? Which one do we live through? Now, after the food was brought over for Jesus to see, the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he arranged for the people to sit around, and it says in an orderly fashion. I don't know how you do that. I mean, it's hard with just the people that are in this room. I can't imagine trying to get 5,000 orderly people to sit down. But he takes the food, and the first thing he does is he looks up at heaven, it says, and he blesses that which he has. Then he breaks and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the multitudes. Now, when they were satisfied, he says to the disciples, pick up the remaining fragments so that nothing is lost. Can you believe that way of seeing, that way of thinking, that already there is this idea that we just don't have enough? And Jesus is like, oh no, and what's left over, bring it over because we're going to use it later on too, right? Like, could you imagine how you can live your life if not only if you, instead of looking at it as what is missing, you would start to think about what you have more than enough of and start to experience life through that way. And so then the more the food was divided and the more that food was shared, the more it multiplied. And it says that everyone ate and was satisfied. See, through his consciousness of spiritual sustenance, Jesus had provided food for the multitude. And in addition, there were 12 baskets that came back with broken pieces of what was left over. Where are you finding places where you think you don't have enough? Where you aren't enough? Where are those areas in your life where you truly believe that there is lack or limitation? Listen, I go there sometimes, right? Like, it's part of what I'm healing through, right? And I try to be very conscious about when it shows up so that I can look at it, heal from it, and grow through that. And so Jesus in this story really invites us to look at some of the steps that we can take. So whenever you are living into some lack or limitation or not enoughness, there's ways that we can get ourselves out of that, right? right? And so the first thing that Jesus does is that he focuses on what is true. He focuses on the spiritual experience. He focuses on the spiritual sustenance that creates our lives. And so where does our faith go when we meet challenges? Where does our faith go when we allow ourselves to be bound by lack and limitation? We go to that place of survival, of let's just try to get enough. I'm already feeling not enoughness. Let me just try to feel a little enough, instead of being able to see that we are meant to see ourselves as worthy and sacred and holy, and our experiences abundant, prosperous, healthy. And so are we looking at what we don't have, or are we looking to see, how can I find God in this situation? How can I find Spirit guiding me in this moment? How can I experience God through this? Charles Fillmore says, your health and prosperity will surely be demonstrated if you are faithful in your open-mindedness, in holding fast to healing and prosperity thoughts. See, it's about being aware of our thoughts, being open-minded to seeing the possibility and the potential that is in every single moment to experience our good. So it's about being aware of our thoughts, of being aware of our thinking, having that positive mindset, looking with curiosity as to where God is showing up and how God is guiding and leading us to that abundant, bountiful place of living. And to ask ourselves, right, like, what is our operating mode? Is it that life is just not going to work for me? Or is it that the universe is friendly to me because I am one with that which it is? The second thing that we got invited to do is to be in gratitude, not after we receive, but in the expectation of that which we have and will receive. And, the 13th apostle that wasn't named in the Bible, but we all know is true, Oprah Winfrey, once said, gratitude can transform any situation. It alters your vibration, moving you from negative energy to positive. It is the quickest, easiest, most powerful way to affect change in your life. And so, if, like, let's say, going back to some of those old times, I had a little bit of money in my bank account. Which of these statements is true? I have a little money in my bank account. Or, wow, I have money in my bank account. Which of those are true? Both. Which one do you want to choose to live into? Which one is the energy that you want to experience life through? Oh, good. You're listening. The third step is to use what we already have, right? Like he said, bring the loaves of fish and no, there's no loaves of fish. Bring the loaves of bread. And somebody make a loaf of fish. I don't know if that'll taste good, actually. But bring the bread and bring the fish, right? And use what we already have. And this is, I think, one of the pieces that is really key, right? Because we tend to think about what we have as sort of the money that we have, the people that we have. What we are promised is what is within us, right? Like our own spiritual nature. And so what we have plenty of and bounty of to be able to then experience life through is we have our own divinity. We have all the guidance that we'll ever need. We have all the wisdom that we'll ever need. We'll have all the faith that we'll ever need. We have the power of imagination and the power of visualization. And so it's an opportunity for us to tap into it and not necessarily go searching for something out there, but go searching in here for where the power is, where the bounty is. Albert Einstein says imagination is more important than knowledge. For while knowledge defines all we currently know and understand, imagination points to all we might yet discover and create. The fourth step is to be good stewards. To be good stewards of what we have. Jesus says, pick up the remaining fragments, bring them over. Don't let things go to waste. How many times have we let our own divinity go to waste? Because we didn't believe it, because we didn't acknowledge it, because we didn't decide to put it into practice. We've been given we've been given this divinity, this Christ nature within us. And so many times I feel that I and others let it go to waste instead of really using it and really leaning on it and trusting it. As Eric Butterworth says, that you are the windows of heaven, and you will be poured out as a blessing. When we're looking for the blessing, the real question is, how am I going to allow the blessing that is already within me to be poured out into my life so that I can see it in my life more fully? And I have to tell you that whenever I have trusted that which has been given to me, more has been entrusted to me. Have you seen that? Have you noticed that? The more you are able to use and not waste what we have, the more that we are given to be able to live from. And the fifth step is to just be generous. You know, imagine the 12 apostles and with the 5 breads and the 2 fish, probably one of the apostles said, well, at least we have enough for us, right? But Jesus said, no, we're going to feed the multitude in this moment. We are not going to be stingy, right? We are going to share. How many times, especially when we're in that sense of lack and limitation and that things aren't going our way, our first instinct is to just close up and become stingy, which in reality, what we're really invited to do is open up and allow that flow to move through us. And so, are you being generous? When you're thinking that you don't have enough money, are you being generous with the money that you have? Are you tithing regardless of outside circumstances? If you feel that there is a relationship that needs more love, are you giving it love? Are you being generous with that individual? If you're having issues at work, I've been there sometimes where you just want to be stingy with who you are and your energy, and you create even more separation. And you don't allow yourself to at least enjoy some of the aspects of the work and the connections that you are making. Charles Fillmore, a co-founder, once again says, give of your substance with the thought that it is God's money you are handling, that you are giving for God's glory. With this thought, you will begin to attract new spiritual resources, and things will begin to open up in your affairs. Take God into partnership with you, and you will demonstrate abundance. Take God into partnership with you. Allow who you are in truth and in reality to be what leads you and guides you in everything that you're moving through. And every time that you have a thought of lack and limitation, go within. Invite the very essence of who you are to be what guides you into knowing that you are here to thrive, knowing that there is abundance and bounty and wholeness as our ultimate truth. And so it is about putting our spiritual principles in practice. And like I said, having the grit to continue to persevere in the face of the world of the 5 senses and live from the world of spirit. Travis Bradbury says, grit is that extra something that separates the most successful people from the rest. It's the passion, perseverance, and stamina that we must channel in order to stick with our dreams until they become our reality. We have it within us. That is the power of will that is part of our Christ nature. That is the power of zeal that is a part of our divine nature. And that is the power of strength that is our divine nature. And so what can you claim for yourself today? Can you go out into the world and see beyond the myth of scarcity and claim and move into a consciousness of Eden, the place where we know our heart's desires will be provided for, the place where there is plenty, not only for us, but for each other and for all that make this beautiful human family. And so do what you must to claim your good. You all said it. You're going to come to that Summer of Abundance workshops and program. But do what you do. Again, it's not about just affirming it. It's about doing the work that you believe that which you are claiming and affirming. And so go to the workshops, read the books, do the practices, pray, meditate, whatever it is to continue to step into the good that is already at hand. I'm going to invite you to do something with me and trust that you are feeling into it so that you can affirm it and know it. So join me in speaking this affirmation. I am abundant. I am being poured out as a blessing. And I am blessed. See, this is your summer of abundance. So make it rain and thrive in all areas of your life. Believe it, receive it. God will provide it. It is the miracle that we have been already promised. Namaste. Thank you for visiting our YouTube channel. We post new videos every week to keep you positive, present, and inspired to your divinity. So now please click on the subscribe button below and hit the notification bell. Remember to share this with your friends and family. We love you, we behold the Christ in you, and we see you doing great things.